The Sony WH-1000XM5 have arrived, and I'm here to give you my impressions after 24 hours. I'll also be hitting you with some quick rankings against some of the top headphones on the market so you can see exactly where the XM5 rank. But before we dive in, I need to let you know that Sony did not send me the XM5 for review purposes. As such, I'm not under any embargoes or agreements with Sony. This impressions video is simply my honest, unfiltered notes based on my own hands-on experience with the XM5 headphones. So let's jump straight in. Now, if you're looking for somebody to read off specs and things of that nature, please feel free to use the links in the video description. I'm not going to be doing any spec reads or talking about any of that stuff. We're just going to get straight into my experience with these headphones. Now, when you first pull them out of the box, you're going to be greeted with this carry case. Now, open this up and you're going to see the headphones themselves. This carry case is a bit bigger than the one before because obviously we no longer have the folding hinges. So that's what you're going to get. Inside here, you're also going to get an auxiliary cable and a USB-C cable to recharge the headphones. Close that up. Does have a magnetic little lid there, so that works pretty well. So here we have the Sony WH-1000XM5 in their black color. These are also available in a silver color, almost looks kind of like a stone. That sort of a silver color, but it is available if you're looking for that. You do have those two options. So now let's start with the comfort, and let's put this in the context of Sony XM4 versus Sony XM5s. So the XM5, in my experience, have less clamping force right out of the box, and they feel lighter on my head. However, the XM5s now have a thinner headband than the XM4, so the XM4s actually feel a bit more comfortable on my shaved head. They cause me less fatigue during a long listening session. Now, the ear cups feel very similar to me, but my large ears feel a bit better inside of the XM4 versus the XM5. Now, it could be the internal shape of the ear cups. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just basing this on my personal experience. Now, a question that comes up very often with headphones is, do they get hot? Do they make your ears sweat? Anything of that nature. So for this test, I actually wore each of them for an hour apiece, and then I let my ears cool off in between rounds. The XM5 ear cup material seem to keep my ears cooler, but the difference isn't huge. It isn't like a night or day difference. So while the XM5s do win in that department, if you live in a hot or humid region, both of these headphones are still going to make you sweat. So please keep that in mind. But overall for me, I would say comfort-wise, the XM5 definitely take the win over the XM4s. So now moving over to the build quality of both the XM5 and the XM4, the materials here all pretty much feel the same. As far as I know, the leather has been changed here, and on the ear pads themselves. So it seems like they're using some sort of a vegan leather. It does feel more smooth and soft to the touch, but overall, not a huge difference when it comes to sheer comfort itself. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice here immediately is the fact that we did lose the ability to fold up these headphones. So here's the Sony XM4 where we can go ahead and collapse them into this small footprint. Here, all we have is a rotation. We have no ability to fold. So that's something that, you have to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at this headphones. It's one of the biggest things that people notice right off top. So if I had to wager a guess as to why Sony made this design change on the Sony XM5s, I suspect that Sony made it because of the weak hinges that have been plaguing Sony headphones for years. So if you guys know what I'm talking about, there's a lot of people who had issues with the hinges snapping on their Sony headphones. I actually had that happen to me a long time ago on a set of the XB900, the extra bass headphones. So this could be why they went that route. One less point of failure. But I don't have an official source on that, but it is something that I wanted to mention. Hopefully this will give the XM5 better durability versus its predecessors, but only time will tell. Now, overall, for the build and the comfort, I feel like we're getting that fit and finish that we've come accustomed to from Sony. Decent materials, premium feeling pads, so overall, very, very good. You're still getting that lightweight, comfortable build, so no complaints from my end there. So now let's get into some of the performance of the Sony XM5. So let's talk about that active noise cancellation and ambient mode. But first, let me preface this section by saying that I do not have access to the Sony headphones app update for the Sony XM5. So this means I cannot change EQ, access DSEE, control active noise cancellation, or the ambient sliders, and I have no access to the multi-point connectivity. This is why this is an impressions video and not a full review video. Now, all testing was done with onboard settings right out of the box. So as such, I went ahead and factory reset my Sony XM4s in order to sort of level the playing field. Now, when it comes to the active noise cancellation, there is little to no EQ shift between modes with either the XM4 or the XM5. Now, active noise cancellation on the XM5s is doing an excellent job of canceling out unwanted noise. And the XM5 actually performs better at higher frequencies as well, as opposed to the Sony XM4 here. Now, I tested both the XM4 and XM5 against crowd noise and airliner jet noise, and the XM5s perform noticeably better at both, especially in those higher frequencies, as I mentioned. And then moving over to the aforementioned ambient mode, the Sony XM5s have a noticeable upgrade in their ambient mode. It's noticeably better than what you got on the Sony XM4. It comes in cleaner, it comes in slightly louder, and less process sounding than the XM4s. Now, to be fair, it is not quite up to par with what you're getting from the AirPods Max, but we have a big step in the right direction here. And as a side note, I'm one of those guys that uses ambient mode far more than I use active noise cancellation. So when we have an improvement of this level for the ambient sound, it's a huge win for me personally. So now let's move over to the sound quality. And all of my sound testing was performed using both Apple Music Lossless for the AAC codec and Qobuz Hi-Res in LDAC, along with some locally stored FLAC and WAV files. Now, the first thing that I came across with the Sony XM5s when it comes to the sound quality was the improvements in the mid-range. There's a noticeable difference in vocal clarity, especially with ladies' voices. Now, the bass remains just as punchy with very good extension, and I know that was a concern of some of my viewers who were worried about Sony going to a smaller driver. We're still getting some excellent bass response here, but it is a little bit different. So there is a bit less mid-bass bloat, so overall the XM5s are going to give you a much cleaner bass sound versus the Sony XM4s right here. Now, the Sony XM4s sound more boomy and dark in comparison to the Sony XM5s and their improved clarity. Now, obviously you can EQ both of these to sound much better, but out of the box, the sound quality is obviously improved, which makes me very happy when it comes to the Sony XM5s. Now, on another note, when using the Sony XM5s with their 3.5mm jack, the sound there is also improved and sounds closer to the sound that you get while using these headphones powered on while DSP is active. So definitely an improvement there. If you want to just use these passively, you totally can. When it comes to the sound quality between the XM4 and the XM5, the win here is obviously going to go to the XM5 with their improved clarity while still keeping an excellent bass response, in my personal opinion. So now let's get into some quick questions that I know a lot of people are asking. First up, is it worth upgrading from the XM4 to the XM5? For me personally, yes, especially if you want that improved sound quality, improved noise cancellation, improved ambient mode, and the improved microphones. But the existence of the XM5 does not negate the XM4s. The XM4 still deliver 95% of what the XM5 give you at a much lower price. So if you don't need to live on that bleeding edge of tech, you might as well skip these and continue to enjoy your XM4. Another question that popped up repeatedly was, how about the XM5s versus the Soundcore Q35, which is a favorite amongst my viewers? These are excellent budget mid-range headphones, come in right around $130. A solid spec sheet with a great feature set, but the XM5 are playing on another level and deliver better performance when it comes to clean sound, active noise cancellation, and a much more natural ambient mode. But for $270 less, the Q35 are a real bargain. And then the last question that came in was, what's the biggest difference between the XM4 and XM5 in my personal opinion? Now, outside of the obvious design changes, the biggest performance difference for me has been the ambient mode, much more clean and much more clear when compared to the Sony XM4. Now, one thing that I missed during the original shoot of this video was a question that came up repeatedly was, how do the Sony XM5s fit while wearing glasses? And as somebody who wears shades all the time due to my light sensitivity issues, I figured it was something that I could address personally. So for me, I haven't experienced any sort of pain or fatigue in the temples or anything like that. And most likely, I feel it's due to the Sony XM5s having lower clamping force on my head, plus also excellent cushion on the ear pads themselves. Now, obviously, user experience, once again, will always vary, but in my experience so far in the past 24 hours, this has been a non-issue. So I hope this helps those of you who are out there wearing glasses with your headphones. So now let's move over to the comparison rankings. And this time we'll be comparing the Sony WH-1000XM5 versus the Sony WH-1000XM4, the Bose QC45, the Technics A800, and the Apple AirPods Max. Now we'll be ranking them for overall comfort, active noise cancellation, ambient mode, and sound quality. The goal of this is to give you some context as to where the XM5 stack up in the rest of the market. So first, let's start with that comfort ranking. In first place, we've got the Bose QC45s. In second place, we've got the Sony XM5s. Third place, we've got the Sony XM4s. Fourth place, we've got the Technics A800. And in fifth place, we've got the AirPods Max. Now, to be clear, comfort is highly subjective. Everyone's heads and ears are shaped differently, so your experience will inevitably vary. For me, the Bose QC45 were the most comfortable right off the jump, followed closely by the Sony XM5. And it's a combination of the lightweight, the light clamping force, and the good cushion on both the pads and the headband itself. And that's what put these Bose headphones in the top spot, in my opinion, when it comes to comfort. And that's going to bring us over to the active noise cancellation ranking. So in first place, we've got the Sony XM5s. In second place, we've got the Apple AirPods Max. Third place, the Bose QC45. Fourth place, the Sony XM4s. And in fifth place, we've got the Technics A800. Now for this test, I used 75 decibels worth of crowd noise and 85 decibels worth of airline noise to determine which was the best. The Sony XM5 did the best job at suppressing ambient noise for both types of sound, followed closely, and I do mean closely, by Apple's AirPods Max. What was truly impressive here was the difference between the XM5s and the XM4s. The XM5s are much more effective at reducing higher frequency noises versus the XM4, and the difference is easily noticeable. So overall, the win for noise cancellation here definitely goes to the XM5. It's truly impressive. So now let's do the ambient ranking. And in first place, we have the Apple AirPods Max. In second place, we have the Sony WH-1000XM5. Third place, we have the Technics A800. Fourth place, we have the Bose QC45. And in fifth place, we have the Sony XM4. Now, the Apple AirPods Max has the most natural sounding ambient mode out of all of the headphones that I tested. It has to be experienced to truly be understood. The XM5 with their improved mics come in at a close second place, but I have really high hopes for Sony here. It feels like their ambient mode is just one or two firmware updates away from challenging the AirPods Max for this title. Now that's going to bring us over to the sound quality rankings. And in first place, we've got the Technics A800. In second place, we've got the Sony WH-1000XM5. In third place, we've got the AirPods Max. In fourth place, we got the Bose QC45. And in fifth place, we've got the Sony XM4s. Now this here was the biggest upset in my testing. The Technics A800 came out of the blue to steal the title for sound quality here. Excellent bass response. They hit hard when needed, but you can easily dial the bass back for a more balanced sound. The mid-range is smooth and clean and presents you with rich vocal clarity. The treble is also nice and crisp and clear. There's good soundstage and instrument separation as well. On the other hand, the Sony XM5 made great improvements in sound quality, as I said previously in this video, but it just wasn't enough to keep Technics out of the top spot. So now let's go ahead and jump into some microphone samples for all 5 of these headphones, both in a quiet and a noisy environment, so you can see which one is going to work best for you. All right, so here we have the microphone sample test for the Sony WH-1000XM5. So testing, 1, 2, 3. Obviously, I'm indoors in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the microphone sample for the Sony WH-1000XM4. So testing, 1, 2, 3. Once again, I'm indoors in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, and here we have the microphone sample for the Apple AirPods Max. So testing, 1, 2, 3. Once again, I'm indoors in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, and here we have the microphone test for the Bose QC45. So testing, 1, 2, 3. Obviously, I'm indoors once again in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, and here we have the microphone sample for the Technics A800 headphones. So testing, 1, 2, 3. Obviously, I'm indoors once again in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Sony WH-1000XM5 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Sony WH-1000XM4 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Apple AirPods Max in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Bose QC45 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Technics A800 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. As always, you're going to have to be the judge of the microphone quality down in the comment section. With all that out of the way, if you're interested in seeing my full review of the #1 earbuds under $200, check out this video right up here. With that said, my name is HiFi, and I'm out this bitch.